Tim, when a man has destroyed the trust in his marriage, and we're talking about someone who actually is like, repentant, they regret it, they know it was a mistake.
Yeah.
What's harder, facing his spouse or facing himself, in your opinion?
Well, facing a spouse is often a scary thing, but facing themselves, I think, if they're really willing to do that, is much more frightening. There's a lot that's required, a lot of bravery, a lot of work that's required into really looking into ourselves, looking into our hearts and saying, what does this tell me about me? And what is it I need to really give attention to if this relationship, marriage, or me is going to heal on the other side of this?
Gentlemen, most men don't plan to have an affair. Most men don't wake up one day and say, you know what, today I'm going to destroy my marriage. But they drift. They justify. They compartmentalize. And then one day, everything explodes. Today's conversation isn't about scandal. It's about responsibility. It's about what happens after the worst decision of your life. Because whether you're the betrayed spouse or the man who crossed the line, the real question is, can something broken this badly actually be rebuilt? Tim Tedler is not just a counselor who works affair recovery and has for the last 20 years. He's the man who lived it. And that's how he got to where he is now, where he's working with other couples who are in this exact spot, because not everybody realizes that an affair isn't necessarily the end. Today, we're talking about what really takes place to make it work after an affair without sugarcoating, without playing games, without false hope. We're going to roll to our favorite sponsor over at MyPillow, and then we're going to dive right into this with Tim Tedler. Mike Lindell and his employees want to personally thank you for your continued support of MyPillow. They have a big allotment of their bed sheets that were earmarked for box stores this spring. Well, they did it again, and the box stores didn't come through. So they're going to pass the savings directly to you. There's no middleman, so you're going to get wholesale prices on their famous Giza Dream bed sheets, which I sleep on every night. Queen size, normally $179.96. Wholesale price, $69.99. King size, $79.99. Another amazing deal they're offering is on their premium MyPillows. Queen size, $18.98. Kings, just $1 more. So go to mypillow.com and use promo code THRIVE. I know, super complicated, right? THRIVE, or call 1-800-794-5834. Free shipping options are available over a certain amount with all of my discount codes. MyPillow has been good to us as sponsors for this show. They've been with us for several years now, and we're grateful for our relationship with them, not only because we use MyPillow products through my whole household, but because they make great products, and they're an American-owned company owned by the employees, and we're proud to be associated with them. So remember, go to mypillow.com, scroll down to the radio podcast square, and use promo code THRIVE, or call 1-800-794-5834. That's my phone number and nobody else's, to get these amazing wholesale offers. Let's go on to our show. The Driven to Thrive broadcast, purpose, growth, and lasting impact for men. Helping men go from living to thriving, purpose-filled, intentional lives. Welcome to the Driven to Thrive broadcast, purpose, growth, and lasting impact for men. I'm your host, Brent Dallin, and we help men go from living to thriving, purpose-filled, intentional lives. My guest today is Tim Tedler, who is a licensed counselor and helps couples recover after an affair, which not everybody even realizes is a possibility. Tim works with individuals and couples to recover after infidelity and has been doing it for over 2 decades after it's what destroyed his own marriage.
It's good to be here. Excited to talk about affairs and all things related to them.
Right? Everybody's most comfortable subject. I'm on a spree.
Sit down next to a stranger. Hey, what do you do? Oh, I work with affairs. Oh, that's a conveation starter for sure.
Right? Everybody's like, moving farther away from you. That's okay. I'm on a roll this season. So far, my last interview, we talked about male sexual health dysfunction.
Okay.
Everybody wants to talk about ED and things like that, right?
Yeah, man. Starbucks, sit down. That's conversation next to keep going on.
That is the theme this year, as I'm having uncomfortable conversations and I didn't even know I had a plan or a theme. Who knew?
Well, I mean, that practically, I do face that a lot. I mean, if I'm meeting someone I don't know, one of the common questions is, so what do you do? And I could be kind of soft in my beginning. Well, I'm a counselor coach, but inevitably they're going to ask, well, what is it that you specialize in? Oh, infidelity and affair recovery. So like, oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. And that either leads to a quick ending to the conversation or moving into some really interesting talk.
Sorry, I have to go, right?
Yeah. But especially if I'm meeting some guy and then their reaction, they're going, oh, this is not comfortable conversation for me. Sorry, you got to be out of here.
Once upon a time, I was a youth minister, but I grew up a preacher's kid. My dad preached for
I
5 plus
was,
years.
hey, same here. Preacher's kid, youth ministry.
And the amount of like conversations I could get out of on a plane.
I'm in
So
ministry.
Right? You sit down and the person starts talking to you like, what do you do? I'm a preacher. Oh, of course, you got two reactions there. It's either, yeah, I'm putting the headphones, or it's they tell you everything they've ever done wrong in their life. So it becomes a confessional. It was always hoping for the earphone people. I just want to read my book, man.
Yeah. I don't really need to hear your confessions right now.
Right. Those uncomfortable people you run into is like, no.
Yeah.
That's okay. We're here to talk about the uncomfortable things because those are the things we have to come face to face with in our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of people.
I mean, I wasn't always interested in talking about uncomfortable things, but I was pretty good at being able to move conversations to something else that I was comfortable with. Not anything that required me to be really true, really authentic, really vulnerable in my life. No way. That wasn't safe territory. So it's become different now.
Right. We're all about hard conversations. That's one of the things I really try and focus on here on the Driven with Our broadcast. Is not just in my interviews. We try and talk about the things that are a little more uncomfortable to talk about that we all need to face in our own lives and deal with, and come to a good place on if we're going to show up as the best version of ourselves and learn to thrive in our lives. And so, I purely accidentally, I did not actually plan this theme for my interviews this year, but hey, this is the way it's going, and I'm
somebody must need to hear it. Yeah.
Right. So I think we've touched on it, but just out and out, Tim, what do you do for a living?
Yeah, I work with individuals and couples that have been affected by infidelity, dealing with that kind of pain, confusion, and come alongside them to help them move forward in a way that's healthy. Not just to kind of move past it, to get out of it, but to learn from it, hopefully in ways that makes them and maybe their marriage or relationship something different, some better in some ways. I mean, we always will wear the scars of those kinds of choices, those kinds of injuries in our lives and our relationships, but they can make us stronger and make us better. And I know saying that, man, sometimes that just feels like it minimizes the extreme agony and pain that people go through. Oh, someone who's been betrayed and someone who wears the shame of, man, I cheated, on my spouse. So I don't want to minimize that. And it can take a long time to move through those things in that period of life. But the knowing that on the other side of that, we can move through the suffering to a kind of, acceptance and forgiveness and trust building and gratitude and even love that is more intimate, more real, more authentic, more vulnerable than we experienced before. I mean, that's the realistic hope, and that's what drives me to help people get there, because man, I had to learn all those lessons myself. I mean, this all came out of not just me sitting down one day going, what could I do with my life? Oh, affair recovery. That sounds interesting. Let me research that. It's like someone that's like a lot of counselors and coaches, it came out of my own experience and my own failure to, having cheated in my marriage and all the consequences that brought into my life. It took me to some really difficult places, and I floundered for a number of years before I started figuring the right things out in my life. And it's been a process since then of growing and learning.
Now, guys, we're going to jump just head first into this pretty quick. But just for all the guys right now who are listening to this, pumping the brakes already, because there are a lot of people who think, wait, is that even like the first thought people have when they found out that someone has been unfaithful or they've been unfaithful is it's over, right? That's the immediate response is this is the end. There are a lot of people who don't even realize like it doesn't have to be that. I mean, it's going to depend on both parties, right? They both have to go, no, this is worth fighting for, which is sadly much less common than people just slamming on the brakes and bailing out. So for the men listening today, what do you say to all of them who are saying, wait, no, that's a once that boundary's crossed, it's over.
But are you saying that they would decide that it's over, or they think if I ever cross that line, I'm with someone that would never, I mean, they're done with me. That's the belief or fear that most guys have, do you think?
I think it's on both sides of the line, right? There are a lot of
Okay.
guys who are like, if my wife ever did that, I'd never,
Well, yeah, yeah. Let me
right?
just say, first of all, that I hear that a lot with people that come to talk to me that say, listen, before this happened, absolutely convinced that if this ever occurred, done, out, gone. And yet they find themselves, and even struggling with why am I here? But they are struggling with, is this something I can get through? Is this something we can get through? And there are people out there that will say, no, you can't, uh, the book that's written, Leave a Cheater, Gain a Life, and anybody that stays in a marriage after infidelity is just being a chump. And I've been doing this for over 20 years and I've got, and many, many witnesses, individuals and couples who have compelling stories to tell, stories of pain and hurt and difficulty. And yet on the other side of it, stories of, learning and growth and change and something that's different than they experienced before. Not everybody gets that. There's a lot that's required to go into to achieve that, but it is a real thing. And a lot of people have experienced. So no, it's not necessarily over. Guys listening to this, I mean, especially those that maybe are thinking about crossing the line or have crossed the line, I would want to come alongside them and say, listen, there's a lot of things you've got to pay attention to, but I don't think the first priority should be, I've got to save my marriage. I think that should be secondary to, wait, I need to slow down and really kind of deal. And maybe both can happen at the same time, but I've got to deal with, wait, how did I get to this place? Because a lot of my clients never thought they would cross that line. That was my story. I was convinced that's something I would never do. And yet I dove headfirst into it. Wait, how did I get to this place? What do I need to learn from this? How do I go beyond just saying, oops, I'm sorry. This time I promise and I really mean it. I'll never do it again. How do I go beyond that to, this is what I'm figuring out. This is what I'm figuring out. This is the changes I know I need to work on. And here is the measure that you can have in my life, looking at me, that these are the things that are different. These are the things that I'm beginning to be really focused on. And the evidence that you can trust me, that there's a change taking place. So, I mean, that doesn't happen in a moment at the process, but when we do that work, we've become a context in which the healing of a secure and satisfying marriage or relationship is much more hopeful, much more doable. If we fail to do that work, we can feel really bad and we can really mean it like, I never want to do that again. But I think those relationships tend to struggle for a long time and have difficulty really reestablishing trust because it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll hope that it doesn't happen again. Let's try to get back to what the old normal was. But you can't even do that after this kind of experience. But no, the hope's real. It's not done. There's just too many examples of individuals and relationships that have survived this in really good ways.
Now, let me pretext this conversation with it takes two guys. And so both of you, if you want to recover from this, you both have to decide you're in for this because it's a long road.
Absolutely. I do think that the person that broke trust probably has the greater responsibility at the beginning to be, oh no, I'm committed to it. Because the other person's just like, they're reeling from it. They feel victimized. understandably so. And it's going to take them a while to kind of settle to the point where they can engage. But you are absolutely right. If that relationship is going to heal and be that better version, it takes both partners committed to the process and willing to do their unique part in helping the healing happen.
Let's start with what actually happens psychologically to the person who's been betrayed when they discover there's been an affair.
Well, I was witness to it. Um, in fact, my ex-wife and I, my marriage ended because of my affair. My career ended because of my affair. But my ex-wife and I have continued to be good co-parents to our children and try to maintain a supportive relationship with each other. I went over to our grandchildren, help her put our grandchildren to bed one night when she was babysitting, and we sat and talked for 2 hours just about even things in the past. And we even got back to the marriage. I mean, again, this is 25 years ago. Our conversations are not these painful, angry. It's just, what are we learning? How are we growing? Let's talk honestly about these things. But as we talked about it, I just reminded her of that moment when I was completely honest with her about what had really happened. Because at the beginning, when we kind of got caught, I lied about it. I minimized it. Oh, yeah, I crossed some boundaries, but it wasn't that bad. But it was. It gone all the way, physically, sexually, emotionally. It was full-blown affair. And when I finally confessed that to her, I mean, I saw what happens to the betrayed. I mean, I saw things and heard things come out of her that I'd never seen before. The grief, the pain, the anger, all that stuff came pouring out of her. And since then, being witness to how that plays out in the lives and the relationships I've worked with, I mean, there are a lot of people that tell me it's the worst pain I've ever been through in my life. And these are people, some of them who've lost loved ones to accident, to death, to whatever, but they're saying, yeah, but this, someone that I thought I could trust, choosing to betray me and hurt me like this, it's a significant wound that usually takes more time than you want it to take to get over it. And the effort, it's harder than people expect it to be. It's trauma.
Why? Right. You already mentioned that most people, you even said, oh, I'll never be that person. That will never happen. Why do affairs happen to what looks like normal or even healthy marriages?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because I think oftentimes they do happen in relationships that by, no marriage is perfect, but by most measures, to say that's a pretty stable, healthy relationship. It's not, affairs don't just happen because, well, this marriage is really bad. And underneath, they must have been really, you know, separated or unhappy with each other. Sometimes that's the case, but it's not always the case. You, I think the cause for infidelity, it's not just one thing fits everybody. There's usually different pieces to the puzzle, but the state of the marriage or the relationship is just one piece of the puzzle. Sometimes it's a small piece, sometimes it's a big piece. Most of the time I find in the guys that I'm working with that the bigger piece to the puzzle is just who they are, what they've learned about intimacy and relationship, the struggle to bring their full selves into their marriage and relationship in a way that's authentic, that's open, that's real, that's honest, that's vulnerable. Man, I didn't learn that growing up for sure. I mean, I learned the opposite in a lot of ways. And I think that doesn't make us cheat. It just creates a context in a marriage where we experience that dissatisfaction with not being connected. And a lot of times we'll equate that with we're not having sex enough, that's not happening enough. But we get it confused with the really connection we all long to have, but we're not good at it. We don't know how to be that kind of partner, but we don't really recognize our stuff. We just blame the relationship or blame our partners or just blame circumstances. And then in that context, a situation or a person comes along that seems interesting, that seems, oh, that's something that I might, if I was free to experience that, I wonder what that would be like. And then if we're open to take the next compromise to even, flirt around with that a little bit more and maybe take the next compromise to say things that leave the door open to see how they'll respond. And then the progression of compromises and justification just, leads to something that feels like, oh, this is the connection I always wanted to experience. I mean, listen, for some, it's just about sex. I'm curious. I'd like to experience that with somebody else. Um, I'm not saying those are good. Those are usually a little bit easier to overcome and mend than the one that walk down the path and find what they feels like real connection. Maybe even begin to feel like, oh, maybe I love this person. But that usually happens in a context where we're not really good at cultivating an intimate, satisfying relationship in our home. And then eventually our criticism, dissatisfaction there leaves us open to something else that feels better, something else that feels good. And like, why shouldn't I enjoy that? I deserve to be happy. I deserve to feel connection. And pretty soon, in my case, compromise, compromise, compromise. If you'd said to me 2 months before I crossed the line that I was going to cheat, I was going to have an affair, I would have sincerely said, I've never done that. I've had opportunities to cross that line and I've always stepped back from it and been really proud of the fact, like, I'm never going to do that. So no, you're talking to the wrong guy. And yet in that moment, I didn't hesitate. Everything in me was pushing me right over the edge, head first into something that I felt like this is what I want. This is what I deserve. And once I'd gone that far, there wasn't be anybody that convinced me otherwise.
Men have a psychological habit of self-medicating. And I mean, that shows up in all kinds of things, so, right? That's why men tend to show up higher in the statistics for alcoholism and tobacco use and drug use,
Yeah.
and even sex intimacy, right? Physical
Mhm.
intimacy. Men see it as another form of self-medication a lot of times for something they feel like they don't know what's missing. They just know that something doesn't feel right. So they're just trying to find something that makes it feel better quite frequently. Um, and from people I've talked to, that seems to be far more common than, oh, I'm just looking for something better or I'm looking for something different. There's surely something that they haven't put words to that is making a hole in their lives,
Yeah. Yeah.
that they're trying to medicate and they just don't know how else to do it for them.
Well, I
But
think,
that's not an excuse, but
yeah. No, I think we're made for connection. I mean, I think whether we recognize it or not, we came into this world needing connection, longing for connection, and experiences along the way. A lot of times, our family experiences, our growing up, sometimes even pre-verbal stuff happens in our life that causes us to be guarded and cautious, or our normal becomes an adjustment to whatever experiences have been in our life. I never understood that. So I went into my marriage with all my normal stuff that was really not, a lot of it wasn't healthy. I mean, I was a good guy and I cared and I loved, and especially at the beginning of a relationship, I could feel all the romance, feel all the connection. So when that starts going away, I know I'm capable of feeling that. It must be something wrong with this person or something wrong with this relationship. Certainly it's not me. But I do think that longing for that connection is something that is central to who we are. And if we don't have that, if we're missing that, we will look for substitutes to it, something that makes us feel better, different, whatever. And in the terms of connection, I'll look to something that makes me feel connected. And if I don't know how to be intimately, deeply, emotionally connected, the one thing I do know that makes me feel connected is, I mean, that isn't an intimate experience for me. And it feels really good. I feel connected to that person. And for some people, that's the farthest they get. I mean, like, oh yeah, look how good that feels. But it is a substitute for that deeper experience that I think is created in all of us. That need is created in all of us to want that, need that.
it's something we share in our relationship topics is men need sex to feel connected with their spouse, whereas women need to feel connected to want physical intimacy most of the time.
Yeah, sometimes that gets flipped, but generally that's true.
Right?
Yeah,
Usually
generally
that's
I
the
think that's true.
thing. So
We
would you,
both want connection. It's just the road there is a little bit
right? Yeah.
different for
Yeah.
both of them.
Women want the connection first, and then this is just a
Hmm.
completion of that.
Yeah.
Um, so would you say it's safe to say that more often affairs actually tend to stem from more unmet emotional needs than character flaws? Because I know a lot of guys, right? Their first reaction once they've crossed the line and they didn't really intend to, right? Because there are people who are just morally, I don't care, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
So
there are some people like that.
we'll throw them to the side. Let's put that group to the side and take them out of the conversation for the rest of the conversation. But a lot of guys, their first response is, "What is wrong with me?"
Mhm.
Right? I can't believe I did this. There must be something wrong with me. I must be broken. And I think it would be safe to say it's usually more about unmet emotional needs that you didn't know, right? You
Yeah,
didn't know they were needed more than
yeah,
some deep-seated character flaw.
right. Like you're
Right.
just born bad. Once a cheater, always a cheater. I guess it just came out now, but you're doomed for the rest of your life. No, I don't think any of that is true. I think asking the question, what's wrong with me, is a good place to start. I think there are things that are, quote, broken in us, but we're not necessarily oh, yeah, I'm just screwed up. I mean, I've got a bad heart, bad character, whatever. So I mean, I had to struggle with that. I mean, in my own shame, forget the other people, the questions other people were asking, like, can we ever trust you again? I was wondering that myself. Like, I was sure that was something I would never do, but I did. How do I ever get to a place of certainty that I won't repeat that behavior? In fact, statistically, I know I'm more likely to do that again than less likely. So, am I just doomed? Did it just show the character tendency in me that is always going to be there and I will never be able to trust myself? But I do think you're right. What you have to get to the place of saying, no, this is revealing something about me, something that in itself is not a good thing. But if I understand it, if I understand where it comes from, and I know how to attend to that, I know how to work on changing that, then it can actually become a catalyst for me becoming a different kind of man that I was before. And that's the good news. Listen, I hold these two truths in balance in my life. The biggest regret of my life was that experience of stepping out of my marriage, the consequence of losing a marriage, losing a career, but more importantly, the wound that it caused on this woman that I had once stood up and promised in better in times and worse times, I'm going to love you. Nothing's going to break that. The children that we had that I at one time said to them, you never have to be concerned about your mom and I ever getting divorced. We're committed. We're in this for life. And the wounds that I inflicted because of my choice that made both of those things a lie, that's hard. That's hard stuff. But I hold that. I mean, that's my biggest regret. If I could go back and undo it, I would do it. At the same time, the other thing I hold on to is that failure in my life eventually became a catalyst for some of the most significant changes I've been through. I mean, I would like to think that I could have gotten there without that. That would be nice. That's not my story. That's not my reality. And it took me kind of going through a really dark period to eventually get to the place of, wait, there's some things about me I need to understand. I need to figure out. And, the result of that is a man who really works to be a better parent, a better partner, a better friend than I was before. I wouldn't, I wish I could undo the first, but I don't want to give up the second, and the truth is I'm what's presented to me is the reality of the choices I've made, the consequences there, and then the opportunities there too. What am I going to do with those? And that's why working with a fair healing is the choice can be healing. And many times it can be the healing of your relationship. Even if that's not an option, it can still be the healing for you because hopefully you will have opportunities for other relationships. And you want to be that version of yourself that is learned, that is healed, that is growing, that is, advancing in this, telling a better story with your life. That chapter, that was kind of a rough one, but you learn from it. And it's the chapters you're creating in the story of your life are good ones, can be good ones if we let it teach us the lessons and learn from it. That they can.
Tim, in your practice and experience, what is the big difference between men who collapse into shame after being caught and men who step into responsibility?
I think there. I'm trying to think if there's one thing that I would say stands out more than the others. I think there's so many factors. Um, one, I'd look at the history. I mean, how have they experienced both the giving or receiving of grace or forgiveness in their life in the past? Because if they haven't received that or experienced those things, it's really difficult in the moment to embrace it. Um, I would say in the particular experience they're in now, is there hope for, I mean, do they see the hope for forgiveness, for grace, for redemption in their lives? Um, because if they can see the glimmer of that being offered, it's helpful as well. I mean, it doesn't take away the responsibility that that man has to just be, regardless of circumstances, to be the one who's responsible for not only what he's done, but for the next steps he's taken. But that inner resolve to actually do it, because it's hard. Um, I think it's both what has developed in them that creates the hope for that chance of them by, it can be their faith experience, it can be their growing up experience, it can be all those things. And are they in a context where there is some support and encouragement or grace showing up in their life? I mean, if you have those two things, it makes it a lot easier to step forward with, okay, things can be different. I can do the work. Now, that doesn't guarantee that's going to happen. That man still has to be the one that's saying, boy, this is going to be hard. If I'm really going to do this right, I've got to be willing to be real. I've got to be willing to be vulnerable. I've got to be willing to learn. I've got to be willing to be humble. Um, those aren't easy asks for a lot of guys. But when we can see that the benefit of that, the result of that is a man who is stronger, more trustworthy, more capable of loving, and he's the kind of man that the people who love him experience a version of him that feels satisfying, that feels like connection. His children, his partner, his friends. When we can see that, and we have the support around us that can help us look up and see those things, encourage us to see those things, and then help us move in that direction, um, we can find the strength to do it. I mean, things like you're doing is trying to gather a message around guys who are in a common search to, what is this growing? What does being a man look like, to me? Being in a community. I mean, if it's online or whatever, just knowing, oh, there are other people that think this way, that this is important to them, can be a powerful catalyst for that kind of change too.
What does real accountability look like beyond saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, right? What does actual
Yeah.
accountability start to look like?
Well, let me tell you what I don't think it is.
Okay.
I I get really nervous in marriages where one partner has an affair, they confess to it, they want to be part of healing. And the expectation is the one who is betrayed now has to stand up and establish the boundary fences and make them really clear. Okay, here's the new boundaries, and you better do all of these things. And the list is created. You know, I need to have access to your phone. I need to know every password. I need you to pull up the history of all of this sort of stuff. I mean, but they're the ones that are establishing those boundaries, and they are the ones that the betrayed person is always the one that's going out and making sure that they're in place, they're being maintained. And oh, here's another one I need to put in place. They are the boundary keeper. And the problem with that is, first of all, the person who had the affair, we're just kind of, oh, okay, we're kind of shamed in this position of, I will follow the rules. I will do what you tell me to do. And, some people say, well, that's what they deserve. They just need to be humbled and accept all of that. The problem is, in the long run, that's not really how you establish trust. I'm going to make things so constrained in your life that I feel safe and that you can't cheat on me anymore. Well, first of all, in today's world, that's almost impossibility. Someone can find a way to secretly cheat if they want to, but it's also exhausting to that person that was betrayed, like to constantly be watching and putting things in place. And in the end, them feeling safe depends on how attentive they are and how sure that they are that those things are being maintained. I think what needs to happen in accountability is that the betrayed person needs to be very honest about, here's the things that make me feel safe. Here's the things that make me feel unsafe. Here's the things you could do that would make me feel more secure right now. And see, some of these things I may not need for the rest of my life, but right now they feel really important to me to state all of those things. But the person who had the affair should be the one that steps up and says, let me take responsibility for doing those things. And that's hard. I mean, we like to be in control of our lives, to always feel now feel like, oh, I'm having to do all these things for someone. But that's what love does. We need to be willing to make that sacrifice. And it does get easier as time goes on. And some of those things that feel so important to be maintaining now, as trust is rebuilt, they become less necessary, less important. But we, the ones who broke the trust, should get to the place, and we might need help to do it, but get to the place where we're willingly stepping in and saying, I'm the boundary setter and keeper for your safety, for your security. Here's the things you've told me you need. Here's some things I've thought about that I think would be helpful too. And some of these things I might struggle with, not because I'm trying to be unfaithful again, just because they're new, it's different, but I'll keep checking in with you, asking you, what else can I do? And I think especially in the near future, in the immediate steps that are taken, there needs to be a lot of attention, a lot of energy given to those of us who broke the trust, to establishing the boundaries and the accountability that we need. I think it's really for the other person to feel safe. If it helps us to have accountability outside of that too, like sharing our stuff with humility, like, here's what I struggle with, and we have friends that encourage us along the way. Even there, I'm not a big proponent of, going to accountability group. And now the accountability group becomes the ones that establish the new boundaries in my life too. No, they should be the ones that are encouraging, what is what healthy boundaries look like, but I'm taking the responsibility for it. I don't need insistence or shame to be the thing that kind of keeps me in line. I mean, I live that. I mean, you say you grew up as a pastor's kid. I grew up in a home where, shame was, wow, I really knew shame well. And I know what it can look like to do the thing that's expected of you because of shame at work. I just don't think in the long run that leads to a healthy life or a satisfying relationship.
Well, and the secondary part you say is better is actually what I was leaning towards, because we're huge into personal responsibility and accountability here, right? I don't think that turning your partner who is already hurt into a warden is going to rebuild a marriage.
No, they may feel like they need to do that, but take that they don't want to do that. I mean, that tires them out. They want us to take the responsibility for it. By the way, I was terrible at that. It took me way too long to get to healthy. Again, and my marriage fell apart. And even some years after that, it took me quite a while to get to the place of realizing, oh, I have a problem that I need to take responsibility for.
How does a man actually start to realize, am I actually changing, or am I just trying to stop the bleeding at the moment?
Well, you're probably trying to do both. I don't think there's anything wrong with realizing I probably have mixed motives here, but you don't want it to just be, I'm just stopping the bleeding. I think here's how it starts to show up. In the quick aftermath of our infidelity, there's enough rushing to, I need to fix this, and enough shame involved that we'll do about anything for a while. But give it a couple weeks, maybe a month or two, and these things that feel important for you to do, if you're letting go of those things in the moments that your spouse is not, or partner is not responding the way that you want them to, whether I'm trying to fix this, but you're angry today, or I'm trying to do my part, but you feel distant. And then that turns into my justification, like, well, I'm not going to try then. Well, then we're just doing things to stop the bleeding. And if it keeps bleeding, like, well, that's not effective, so why should I keep working on this? If, on the other hand, we start adding to that motive to, you're bleeding, I want to stop this. Our relationship's bleeding, I want to stop that. And we started using that with that additional motive, like, oh, but these things are good for me to do. They're healthy for me to do. Should be characteristic of the way that I'm living. And we create that vision of this is the better version of me. And again, this doesn't come in a moment, doesn't come with just aha, insight. It's usually a progression of learning, but it starts to show up in that guy. And the evidence of it is in the months that follow, when it's still hard, when you come home and things have been going well, and then all of a sudden your spouse has been triggered again, and it feels like you're back at ground zero. What shows up in you isn't like, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm, I'm not dealing with this. Or, and even you do that in a quick reaction, do you come back saying, no, 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 I need to try to engage. I realize there's pain or fear behind what's coming out right now. How do I bring comfort or relief to that? If that continues to show up, not perfectly, but consistently, that's what's in our hearts. That's what we keep trying to do. Then that's pretty strong evidence that that's coming from a different place. I'm not just trying to control the circumstances. I'm trying to change me. And even when the circumstances aren't going the way I want, there's that version of me that's trying to show up anyway. That's encouraging. And I can think of times in my life when that started to show up and I wasn't getting the quick result I wanted, but there was still a satisfaction in me, like going, ooh, that new version of me I see it, I see it and I'm thankful for it. I want to keep cultivating that. That's the first thing that comes to mind as far as that's a clear distinction between one motive and the other.
So let's start. We've gotten through the moment, right? We've owned our mistake and decided, no, we said forever, we're going to start a path towards working to heal, working to rebuild. What are the most common mistakes couples make in the first 90 days after a disclosure like this?
Oh, well, there's a number of tripping points. And this is my perspective. You will find counselors or coaches that may disagree with some of these points, but I feel pretty strongly about them just because I've seen the evidence of alternative approaches and what the consequences of those can look like. One of the things, and very quickly, is this insistence like, okay, I deserve to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So prepare yourself. We're going to go through, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm going to ask every question I can think of, and I'll probably ask them over and over and over again. And you better tell me the truth of every detail of every question I ask. First of all, I think the person betrayed has the right to ask questions and to know the truth. But the caution I give is not to protect the betrayer. It's to protect the person who is now sitting there wounded and feels like the remedy is this thing that's confusing to me that you lived. I need to know all the detail that you lived so it is clear in my mind as it can possibly be. So I'm not imagining things. I'm not, the things I can imagine and wonder about are worse probably than the reality. Sometimes that's true. The problem is when you get to a level of specific detail, especially when you're getting into the detail of, sexual interaction, or even a lot of the detail about what are the exact words and stuff you said to each other all the time. Let me see the text. Let me see the pictures. Oh, you have a video? Let me watch that too. Those are inflicted wounds that are never going to go away. There will always be triggers because you can't unlearn those things. So I think being very careful and stepping back and taking time to what are the things that are really important for me to know about this? What's the information that's going to be helpful and what's going to be harmful? And by the way, the person that had the betrayer should not be the one that's controlling all of this. That's what you did in the affair. You were controlling information. Hopefully you get somebody to help you through this process or a resource to help you through this process. But their attitude should be, what you need to know, I'm going to be honest. They shouldn't be in the place where, well, I'm not going to tell them the truth because that's just going to hurt them more. That's the wrong choice. That's the choice we made in an affair. There's some things I'm not going to tell you because, that would bother you. We need to be willing to be absolutely honest. But at the same time, we can say, hey, can we do this carefully? I don't want to do this in a way that's going to hurt you more, but I'm committed to be completely honest with you. Let's go to someone that can really help us do this in a smart way. So, that's one of the pitfalls. Another pitfall is, a lot of times it comes out of our churches is like, well, if they said they're sorry, just forgive them. And it's almost like, just do it and move on. When there's little offense, little forgiveness is required. When it's a great offense, great forgiveness is required. And for most of us, that doesn't happen quickly or in a moment. It's usually a progression of parts of this I can forgive and begin to let go of and let be in the past. Other parts, it's going to take me longer. Something I say I forgive, I might come up and use it as an accusation against a weapon against you. So maybe I need to do a little bit more of work on forgiveness. So anybody that steps too quickly to forgiving, I'm always a little suspicious of that. And, I'm always right because it comes out in other ways, unhealthy ways, either, the constant blowing up or triggers the anger or this suppressed thing that just brings them down into this closed off victimization that isn't healthy either. So moving to, quickly to forgiveness, I think to start out with the assumption that the only outcome of this experience is this. And whether you say that the only outcome can be that, oh, we have to stay together, or the only outcome could be, oh, well, of course you've cheated, so we have to break up. There should make room for the possibility of making a choice in this. Because if you're constrained by this is the only possible this is the only possible outcome, I don't think you're really going to be engaged in the process of making a choice in a way that's considering everything that needs to be considered in that moment. Um, there's probably lots of things. Lots that come to my mind most quickly when you ask that question.
All right, we're going to split the next one up a little bit. If a man listening right now has crossed the line emotionally or physically, what are the first three things that he should start doing to try and repair that?
Does the partner know about it?
That's a valid question. We could go both ways on that.
Well, boy, let's start with they know about it. They found out about it.
Okay. We'll start there.
There should be just a complete commitment to, I'm going to be truthful with you. Again, as I said before, around that can be, let's be really careful and intentional how we do it. It's not to protect me. I just really want to protect you and protect us. If you don't trust me, let's go to someone else that we can trust. But there should be this commitment. I'm going to be honest with you. There are way too many times the truth comes out. They call it trickle truth. It comes out in little pieces. And there's a lot of motives behind that. Sometimes we're too shamed. We don't want to hurt ourselves by revealing too much of our, errors, our gross choices. Sometimes for some people, it's, I still want to leave the door open a little bit. So I don't know how much I would just want to tell. What if I want to go back to that person? But a lot of times it really is about concern for the partner. Like, boy, if I tell you the truth about all this is going to suck. I mean, it's going to hurt you. But this is where we have to realize if you're going to rebuild trust, there has to be commitment to truthfulness and honesty. So that would be the first thing. Expect that there is going to be rough times ahead. This is going to be really difficult. There are going to be lots of ups and downs. And as I said before, it's going to be harder than you expect, take longer than you want. You need to be prepared for that and know that what's coming out of your partner is a result of trauma that you have some responsibility for inflicting in their life. It's a natural outcome. I think for a lot of guys, especially because we're so used to regulating our emotions and shutting them down when we need to, that, we expect the big reaction at the beginning, but after a week or two, wait, there's like an expectation. Shouldn't this be settling down? Certainly a month or so, 2 months, 3 months down the road, we're still dealing with triggers. There's that part of us that said, you should be able to handle this better. I'm just telling you, that guy, no, you need to expect it's going to be a rough ride. And we're not talking days or weeks. You're probably talking months and maybe a year or two before things settle down to what the new normal is going to be. If you go into this expecting, like, I'll say my apology, promise not to do it again, and within a week or two, it's uncomfortable, we're doing okay, that's unrealistic. So go into this realizing it's coming out of their pain, out of their fear. And if you really want this to work, you've got to be committed to showing up to provide comfort and assurance to that pain and that fear in their life. And it's going to take time. I would just say to guys, as a third thing, get help. I mean, I finally started getting to the place that I needed to get to without help, but it took me a long time, and my marriage ended. I didn't have good help around me at the time, and I probably wouldn't have been open to it even if I had. But if someone's there and saying, I want to do the right thing, don't just trust on what you think you know about yourself and what the situation requires. You probably don't. You know it's normal for you. You have a good perspective of a lot of things, but there are probably some things that you're not aware of in your life, some things you've been blind to. This affair probably has its roots in some of that stuff. So get someone who understands this process and trust them, go to them, be open to them, be honest, and learn. I felt that coming on for a while. But yeah, but learn from them and be willing to kind of be. I mean, for a lot of guys, this is not the kind of stuff we want to open up about. And we just rather, oh man, can I just move on from this? I do not want to go to talk to someone else, especially someone if I don't know them, about my problems, my struggles, things that are embarrassing to me, failures. Yeah, we don't like talking about that. But if you want to change, if you want to grow, open up, man. Take that risk, take that chance, because you'll probably learn some things about yourself that you would not learn otherwise.
So
Now,
this,
let's go back. Let's go back to the person you've crossed the line emotionally, sexually, and you're with a partner who doesn't know. I'm going to tell you, I think that's a lot trickier. On 20 years ago, I think I would rather quick in my response to say, well, man, if you're going to live with honesty and integrity, you better tell them. You just commit to honesty. And there's a big part of me that still values that. I know I have to be very careful here because there are a lot of people who would listen and they're looking for the excuse not to be honest, not to be real, not to be vulnerable. So if you give me any out, I'm going to, yeah, that's me. I'm going to take it. So I guess people are just going to have to accept this and hopefully be honest with themselves. I have recognized that there are some circumstances. I mean, listen, the revealing of infidelity, of a breaking of trust is going to be harmful and damaging. So I would never want someone to take the excuse, well, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to hurt my partner, don't hurt my marriage. And then it just stops there. All right. If you think you're going to make that choice, you need to get help yourself. You can't just go, I don't want to hurt them more and I'll never do this again. You need to be committed to the change you need to grow. And I think most of the time, if I was involved with someone like that, and I have been a lot of times where the partner didn't know, my encouragement is going to be, if you're going to step back in this relationship and expect to really have trust building again, you're going to have to do some things differently. And that's going to mean being authentic. It's going to mean being honest. And how are you going to be able to live with that if you carry this secret, if you carry this thing you're going to have to keep lying about in some way for the rest of your life? How can you maintain being healthy? And they're going to have to weigh that against the damage they think it would inflict on a partner. And there are some cases that I've been a part of where I know the truth, if it were completely spoken, would have such profound effect that I don't know that it's worth telling it. For instance, someone who is married to someone who has in the past had significant trauma in their life, maybe has had suicidal tendencies or ideation. I think you need to be very careful with those kind of things. I had one guy that in his confession to me and understanding the whole truth of his story, admitted that one of the lines of infidelity that he crossed was inappropriate physical and sexual. It wasn't intercourse, but it was sexual behavior with his wife's mother, his mother-in-law. And I just knew, okay, well, that's going to be a whole can of worms that I'm not sure that I'm with confidence. I can say, well, you better tell your wife about that. I mean, so I just think there's some circumstances where there are some exceptions. Most of the time I'm encouraging people, you probably need to tell them if you want a chance for a better relationship, be honest with them. Yeah, the risk of that is they may listen to that and go, yeah, I don't want to be with you anymore. But I mean, you're giving them the choice. If you don't tell them, you're not giving them that choice. So that's usually the way I encourage people.
I appreciate you walking that line. I knew that was a dangerous question. Sorry, I didn't really mean to set you up. Let's put the shoe
No,
on the
I mean,
other.
I would say one more thing about it. There have been occasions where I've been with men and women, most of the time men who have decided themselves There are some things I'm not going to tell. They'll admit some pretty bad things, but then there's some things that I just think that would be so hurtful and so devastating or have other consequences that I'm not going to tell that. Um, and when they've made that choice, what I encourage them to do, I said, well, I think you need to write a letter of confession to your wife and, and tell the truth about this, but also give your reasons for not telling. And listen, the reasons can't be you're just trying to protect yourself. If that's it, then this is just a selfish choice. But if there are reasons you believe are valid for not saying those things, put those down too, so that they would understand it. You seal that, date it, do whatever you can to mark that, and then give it to me or someone else you trust to put in a file somewhere that will never come out unless you need it sometime in the future. Where it's surprising how information, the truth, bubbles up in unexpected ways in the future. And if it ever did come out in some way, for you to reach back and say, you know what, I actually thought about this and I wasn't not telling you just out of a selfish motivation. I was trying to think of you and our relationship. You may not agree with me, but here, at least read this so you know how I was processing it back then. And sometimes that can be helpful.
Putting the show on the other foot, if a betrayed spouse is listening and it's just feeling shattered, what is one step that they can take today to regain stability?
Well, realize that this suffering you're going through, and I'm not going to minimize the suffering at all. It is suffering, like I say, that a lot of people say it's the worst thing they've ever been through in their life, and it's going to take some time to get through it. But even though you may not be able to see it yourself, I hope you can trust people like me or people who've been through exactly what you're going through and have a story to tell on the other side of it that would sit alongside you right now and not try to convince you not to feel these things like, oh, this is, you shouldn't feel. No, they would sit with the pain. They would sit with that sorrow. They would sit for a long time as you deal with this, but also be telling you that there is hope for something else. It's not an unrealistic hope. It's a realistic hope. So at least being able to know there's a possibility, even though you can't feel it right now, that something, there could be an outcome to this that is actually teaching me something, and I'm growing and I'm going to learn how to accept this, first of all, as a real part of my life. I wish it wasn't, but it is. I'm going to move towards what does it mean to really understand getting past resentment to be able to forgive this person. Whether I stay with them or not or trust them, that's a separate issue, but it needs to start. Forgiveness is something that's beneficial to me. How do I understand it? How do I move towards that? And then that they are like, I want to see if we can heal. What does it look like to risk trusting them again, to move even towards a kind of gratitude of seeing, oh, this is what we can take out of this experience. This is what we're learning from it. Me and my partner. This is what we're working together to build. And from that, experiencing a new kind of love. You do not have to sit here as a victim to plan B for the rest of your life. Well, I had this expectation, wonderful life. This is what it's going to look like. And now that's shattered. I'm just going to be in this subcategory of something less than. I don't think that's necessarily true. You will always remember this. This is part of your story, and it's not a fun one. There's going to be grief and pain attached to it, but there can also be gratitude and thanksgiving eventually because of what you learn and how you grow from it. So, first of all, having that perspective, but right now, grief. This is a loss. There's nothing wrong with just feeling the grief of this and letting that be okay. Just know that you don't want to bring your tent in the cemetery and pitch it there and say, well, this thing I lost, I guess I'm going to live here. No, you grieve, you spend some time grieving. Eventually you can walk out of the cemetery. Sometimes you have to come back and visit and sit a while, but eventually, you're going out and living another life, but it's a process and it's going to take time. And especially for those who've maybe been betrayed, there's sometimes its own shame wrapped around that. The shame of the betrayer is obvious. The shame of the one who is betrayed sometimes isn't as obvious, but that feeling of, did I do something wrong? And if they don't think they did anything wrong, then the question is, so what's wrong with me? Why wasn't I enough? Why did you choose to go there and do that with that person instead of keeping your choice of loving me? So there's a lot of shame that's wrapped around in that, and not letting the shame wrap you up and kind of keep you frozen. That um, you got to do your own battle with um, with that, you know, and and shame, man, shame's the guest at the door that's always showing up wanting to do something. But I started to say the reason I go there is that shame many times will keep even the one who's betrayed closed off. They don't want anybody to know about this. They won't. I can't believe how many clients have not told anybody else. They just they don't want their partner's reputation to be hurt. They don't. They feel, they feel embarrassed by it. But my absolute strong recommendation is, man, you need to have at least one person, if not more, in your life, someone that cares about you, that you trust, and is going to support the direction you're choosing to move on the other side of this betrayal. Isn't going to sit there and try to force you to do one thing or the other, but you can trust them to keep this between the two of you. You know that they care about you. You need to find at least one person in your life that is alongside you in that way.
Tim, as we start to land this plane, what's next for you? You got any big projects or anything you want to share?
No, I mean, when COVID came along, there's a lot of things that were going on in my life. I was moving, a lot of things going on in my family, and I kind of backed off to creating resources on my website and stopped putting out new podcast episodes. And then about a year ago, I decided, man, I went through a period of even like kind of feeling slightly depressed. I was still doing my work and everything, but man, I was just kind of from a darker place, and just dealing with that about a year ago and coming back to my purpose and my passion. And so I just started, with kind of with renewed interest and effort, putting more work into the resources I was providing on affairhealing.com, starting the Affair Recovery Room podcast, kind of taking the old episodes down, just starting from scratch again at the end of June last year. And it's been really fun trying to bring creativity into that, bringing interesting guests on. So, doing that and then working with the clients that come to me. Actually, this past year, I've spent a lot of years working with whoever came to me, couples, individuals, ones who betrayed, ones who broke trust, however they came with their need. I was just very broad in my approach. And I still am open to all those people, but I've been much more focused on the resources putting out and the services I offer to people who have been the betrayers, especially a lot of guys. Like, listen, I've been there. You are a key to what happens from this point on. And if it is just this admission of I'm sorry and I promise never do it again, if that's all the farther you go, it's not enough. So how can I come alongside you and help you really gain the understanding you need from this experience so that you learn, that you grow, and you become an effective trust builder in this new version of the marriage or relationship that you have. So that's kind of been the growing focus and passion in my work.
Tim, we've taken a very difficult conversation for a lot of people. And we have undoubtedly touched some uncomfortable places for some people. And sometimes it's a whole lot to process in one breath. And people may have to go back and listen to this again. And we'll have, your connection points, of course, for everybody down in the show notes so they can connect with you. Gentlemen, an affair doesn't start with sex. It starts with drift. It starts with secrecy. It starts with small compromises you convince yourself don't really matter. And recovery? Recovery doesn't start with forgiveness. It starts with truth. It starts with ownership. And it starts with looking in the mirror and deciding you will not ever be that man again. If you've betrayed trust, the worst thing you can do is hide behind the shame. And if you've been betrayed, the worst thing you can do is believe you're crazy for being shattered about it. What Tim has reminded us today is this: healing is not quick, it's not clean, it's not easy, And it's not guaranteed, but it is possible. Not because time fixes things, not because love fixes things, but because truth, responsibility, and sustained change rebuild safety. And whether you're rebuilding your marriage or rebuilding yourself, the question isn't, can this ever be what it was again? The question is, will you become the kind of man who can be trusted again? That's the work. That's the line in the sand. And that's where thriving begins. Tim has one more thing to share with us, and then we'll close this one out. What is the most important thing you want people to hear today?
Well, let me speak to that guy out there that maybe has crossed the line and they've broken trust. Maybe it's known, maybe it's not known. There are resources in this world that really want to help you, that are not out to shame you, just help you to take what's happened, deal with it in an honest way, and tell a better story with your life. So don't let the embarrassment and shame of this kind of wrap you up and keep you from that very process that can be life-changing for you. It's scary, it's risky, it's not easy, but I encourage you to take the risk of doing it. And I'll just say one simple thing. If there's anybody out there that fits that and you're wondering, well, what could I do? If you go to my website at fairhealing.com and click on the renovate link, it just kind of talks about that. And there's a form that you just tell me your story and that comes to me. There's no obligation. You don't get on a mailing list, nothing like that. I read your story and I will respond to you there are a lot of different ways I will respond to people depending on what their experience, what their story, and what their need is. And a lot of times the response isn't anything that I'm involved in. Like, oh, here's a resource that I'd really recommend you consider that you reach out to and get help on. And if it's something I can help with, it's not one size fits all. There could be a number of things, but it's a starting point. And if they've never told the story, never taken that risk, it's it's a non-threatening way. Just take a first step. So I would encourage them to do that.
Guys, for myself and Tim, thanks for joining us today on this episode of the Driven to Thrive broadcast. Be better tomorrow because what you do today, we'll see you on the next one. The Driven to Thrive broadcast, purpose, growth, and lasting impact for men. Helping men go from living to thriving, purpose-filled, intentional lives.